The AFC East, probably the division I was a year too early on the party for. I really thought last year Buffalo was going to take out the New England Patriots. They came close. It didn't happen. They might have stole one game from them if Matt Barkley didn't come in. But hey, this year, I don't think there's any question. It's the Buffalo Bills. In the words of Chris Berman, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Well, the Buffalo Bills are finally going to dethrone the AFC's tyrants known as the New England Patriots this year. I think just a combination of that defense, you add Stephon Diggs on the offense, and now you're looking at the New England Patriots dropping down. They no longer have Tommy Terrific. I think it's kind of obvious, as well as that strong defense, that the Buffalo Bills are gonna run the AFC East this year. Number two, I'm gonna pick a surprising team. I'm gonna go with the New York Jets. As crazy as that sounds, I don't think with the Jets coming in second, mind you, I don't think the Jets are going to go 11-5 and come in second place. I think the Jets are probably going to come in maybe 8-8, 9-7. If you look back at the Jets last year, you think to yourself, well, they had a terrible year. Well, they went 6-2 down the stretch. Granted, it was against bad teams, but they did go 6-2 down the stretch. I think it's Don't get me wrong. I also believe it's entirely possible they absolutely bomb and Adam Gase gets fired for not really being a great coach. But I just think talent-wise, I think this team's offense is going to take another step in the right direction this year. Jury's still out on Denzel Mims, but I also think Sam Darnold's going to take a step in the right direction. I think Le'Veon Bell is going to play better this year as well. And I definitely think the Jets are going to come in second, but maybe at a 9-7 rate. Number three is New England. Hard fall from grace from New England. I'm going to say they're going to end 500. They're going to end 8-8. I know today Bill Belichick came out, or yesterday he came out and talked about platooning quarterbacks. He's not platooning quarterbacks. It's Belichick. He's trying to do that Belichick thing, but let's be honest. He's not going to platoon his quarterbacks. Bill Belichick is going to strictly end up starting Cam Newton, but the problem is, does Cam Newton stay healthy? I say no. I think Cam Newton goes down within the first 4 or 5 games. I think he might win them a few games, but at the end of the day, you can add Cam Newton. You're not adding much of that already terrible offense. I mean, you go back and look at their offense last year, it was abysmal. It was just horrible. They had nobody that could get the ball down the field. Sony Michel's a good running back, but they don't have any playmakers there. N'Keal Harry's looking like an all-out bust. It's just hard. So I don't think New England is really going to have the offensive firepower to move it, even with Cam Newton, although I think he gets injured. I think Jared Stidham comes in. Stidham plays okay. At the end of the day, New England still has a top-rate defense, and that's never going to change as long as Belichick's there, but that offense is just abysmal. I think Stidham's a one-year starter. I think after this year, he's going anyway. It really won't matter. New England will start, looking for quarterbacks next year, but I think the Cam Newton experiment really doesn't work in New England, and Jared Stidham will come in, do okay, nothing great, and New England's going to end 500. And then fourth will be the Miami Dolphins, because they added Tua, but Tua's not going to play. They played hard for Brian Flores in the end. They added some talented pieces, but I don't know if they get much better than 5-11. And as crazy as it sounds, because you'd look at it and go, but Frank, they were trying to tank last year, and the team won, and look at them. It was a rally the troops type effort a lot of the times, where you watch the Dolphins win games that in reality they shouldn't have won to begin with. Well, you can't do the rally the troops effort twice. Now they're expected to do something. They're not really expected to win. Let's be honest. That's not what people see out of the Dolphins this year. Maybe a 7-9 season would be cool for Miami, but I think they go 5-11 again. I think Fitzmagic does that Ryan Fitzpatrick thing where he has one really good season and then just falls off a cliff and has a terrible season. Ask the New York Jets how that works. That's usually how Fitzpatrick, operates. He has a really good season and then a terrible season. I think it's going to be similar. They're going to bring Tua in, and I think Tua is going to be exciting, but I don't think Tua is going to just come in, be Rookie of the Year, light the world on fire, and all of a sudden the Miami Dolphins are moving on to the playoffs or to a 10-6 record, or even an 8-8 record for that matter. I think they're going to end 5-11 again. I think Brian Flores doesn't get fired. I think he's shown to be a pretty good head coach so far with what he's had, but they need some help elsewhere on that team. Their O-line is still terrible. You're looking at Tua. a guy who's injury prone. He's going to be running for his life if he does get back there, because that O-line at the end of last year was still atrocious. So I have the AFC's Buffalo probably ending around 12-4 actually, especially with the addition of Stephon Diggs. That's gonna be a good team. Buffalo about 12-4. The Jets 9-7. New England about that 8-8 range, and Miami about 5-11. By the way, at the end of this, if you were to count down every record, it's probably not going to end up as the perfect. I think it's like 256 and 256. That's not how this is going to work. I'm just a rough estimate, give or take. The AFC North. Yeah, the defending AFC North champion Baltimore Ravens. They've had two rough stretches in the playoffs. I don't think that changes for the regular season. I think they're still going to be a super talented team. I don't think they go 13-3 again though. I think the Lamar Jackson show is going to be figured out a lot more this year than it was last year. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have to far succeed as a passer to continue that going that way. And I think the Ravens are going to have to change something up. They ran him over 130 times last year. That's way too much for a quarterback. That is an insane amount for a quarterback. Eventually, that beating on his body wears him down, and you're not going to have a long shelf life. Ask Cam Newton. Cam Newton was the same thing. This superstar quarterback, but 5 years into his career, he's bouncing around with injuries upon injuries. I think Baltimore still wins the division, though. I don't think the division's great by any stretch of the imagination. They'll probably end 11-5, 12-4. Tough schedule with a lot of first-place teams going on. So I would probably give Baltimore a 12-4, 11-5 record, but I definitely think they still carry the AFC North. I think they still very well could sweep the AFC North. So I think Baltimore in that aspect will be fine. Their biggest issue is going to be exercising those playoff demons, especially Lamar Jackson. 2 playoff starts, 2 just horrible performances. Just not looking good for him now in the playoffs. And if they do make it to the playoffs, which everybody's expecting next year, he's really going to have to show something, or that narrative is going to get real loud real quick. Number 2 is going to be Pittsburgh. They're going to have a bounce back year. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin doesn't get enough credit for the job he did last year. This is a team that was throwing out Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, and they were horrible. I'll be the first person to admit I thought Mason Rudolph coming out of college would have been a good NFL quarterback. He's not. And Duck Hodges is also not. So you got Ben Roethlisberger back there. He's got a rebuilt elbow. Maybe. I don't know. I kind of hope, I'm not a Steelers fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I hope that we don't see Ben throw like 1 or 2 passes and immediately do like the pitcher like arm lock and grabs the elbow thing. That would be a shame. But I think with Ben back there, I don't think he's going to be what he once was, but I think they're going to be better than with Duck Hodges throwing the ball, and they'll end about 10-6. I think they'll give the Ravens a run. It'll be back to the way that division usually runs, but I still think Baltimore takes that number 1 spot. Number 3 is going to be Cleveland. I don't know what to think about Cleveland. Are they talented? Yes. Or was all their issues coaching last year? I don't think so. Was a lot of their issues coaching last year? Yes. I think Kevin Stefanski is easily an upgrade over Freddie Kitchens. I don't understand why Freddie Kitchens got the job, other than the fact that Cleveland finally had a quarterback that wasn't absolute hot garbage and then just went, well, he likes Freddie Kitchens, so since Baker likes him, we'll keep him. And that didn't work. That was a horrible hire. Stefanski, I think, is going to be an improvement. However, they, just like the Dolphins, have this issue. Their O-line is terrible. And you really saw it last year where Freddie Kitchens kept running long, developing plays, and Baker couldn't get the ball out immediately, and it was just a mess. He was getting hit. He was turning the ball over. It was a nightmare. I'm going to be interested to see if this locker room as well can bounce back. They were having a lot of locker room issues last year. Baker Mayfield just came out and said he really, it stressed him out last year to play. He did not have a fun time playing football last year. Well, does that just go away with a new head coach? It's entirely possible, but that's a lot to put on a first-year head coach to immediately come in and completely change the culture around and create a winning culture at the same time, especially coming into a team it's not like Freddie Kitchens just started for 1 year this culture of being, a terrible franchise and a bad football team. No, that Freddie Kitchens just added to a long list of horrible coaches that shouldn't be coaching in the NFL, Hugh Jackson, that was just running Cleveland consistently into the ground. So I think Cleveland is still going to struggle a little bit. I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I think maybe like a 9-7 record. They're going to end right behind Pittsburgh, but I just think Pittsburgh and Baltimore defensively are too good for that maligned O-line for Cleveland. And Cleveland's defense, while not terrible, it's not stout. It's not A+. They still are going to have to score, and I don't know if they're going to be able to outscore Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And then finally, it's going to be Cincinnati. Look, I think Joe Burrow is going to be an excellent NFL quarterback. Everything about Joe Burrow I like. I don't think him playing for a bad team for 1 year is going to just wreck his confidence and ruin him for his NFL career. But there's things that remain to be seen. One of them is Zach Taylor a good coach? Zach Taylor came from the Sean McVay coaching tree. Well, right now, the Sean McVay coaching tree doesn't look too good because Sean McVay doesn't look too good in Los Angeles. So, granted, he was another one who took over just a god-awful team. They tanked without people noticing they were tanking. So it'll be interesting. Cincinnati added some weapons for him as well. Hopefully AJ Green comes back healthy and his franchise tag deal gets worked out and all that. Cincinnati's defense actually isn't terrible either, but they need a lot of work. I think it's going to be another year where Cincinnati just needs, 3, 4, 5 good draft picks, maybe 2 good drafts in a row, and then they can start to really develop to where they have good pieces and all over the team that can start to build that team back up. This year is not going to be the year for them. The AFC West, you got the defending Super Bowl champions there. Will there be a Super Bowl hangover for the Kansas City Chiefs? No, they're fine. You'll have the Chiefs will win the West. Their offense just got better. They really did. Adding Edwards-Helaire from LSU really adds a completely different dynamic to that offense that can now seriously run the ball. Kansas City was an okay rushing team last year, but now they can have a threat out of the backfield that they really didn't have last year, and I think they're really going to dominate. It'll be interesting to see how they move forward, how Mahomes moves forward with his big contract. It's going to be interesting, but I don't think they're going to just fall off the face of the earth. I still think that defense poses a lot of questions. If there is an Achilles heel in the Kansas City Chiefs, it's that defense. But as of right now, their offense is good enough to keep them well alive. Kansas City's defense can be as terrible as they want to be, but their offense can just come out and light the world on fire. And at the end of the day, the name of the game is to score more points. Thanks, John Madden. Number 2, I've got the Chargers in the West. I think last year was an interesting year for the Chargers. They lost a lot of games late with Phillip Rivers at the helm. I think for the offense that the Chargers wanted to run and the offense that you kind of have to run now with Phillip Rivers, it didn't work out. Tyrod Taylor is going to be interesting. I don't know how long he stays the starter. I think you either are going to see Tyrod go half the season, maybe a little bit more, but I think Justin Herbert will come in at some point this year. And I think Justin Herbert's going to be okay in the NFL. The issue I always had with Justin Herbert was, if you go back and look at when he started at Oregon and he was the next big quarterback to when he ended at Oregon, the problem that he had was there wasn't a whole lot of progression from him. He was what he was at the start, which is a good quarterback, to the end, which is a good quarterback. So then I wonder in the NFL, is he ever going to be anything more than a just good quarterback? I don't think he's going to turn the ball over a lot in the NFL, which is why I think they're going to be okay, because last year you had Phillip Rivers turning the ball over just left and right. And sure enough, it cost them a lot of games late. A lot of games late. If you go back and look at the Chargers last year, I think I could think of at least 3 or 4 games where Phillip Rivers threw an interception or fumbled the ball really late in the game, and you just looked like, are you serious? Like that's actually how you're going out? All right. Tyrod Taylor, Justin Herbert, I don't think they're going to turn the ball over as much. And the Chargers are another team similar to New England. Their defense is just excellent. It's just absolutely dynamic. And they only got better adding Chris Harris Jr. on the defense. In that secondary, I wonder who they're trying to take out, the Chiefs. So I have them coming second, probably around 10-6 in that area. Number 3 is going to be the Broncos. The Denver Broncos just said, let's get wide receivers. And they went and got Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. I think they're going to be just an excellent offense this year. In terms of weapons, it's going to fall on Drew Lock. Drew Lock at the end of last year looked like he was starting to really get into a rhythm, start to show that maybe Denver does have a quarterback for the future, that John Elway finally picked a good quarterback. But you saw a limited role for Drew Lock. It'll be interesting to see if he can continue to succeed. It'll be interesting to see if guys like KJ Hamler make it in the NFL. He's a speed guy, but he's a small guy. I watched him at Penn State. It's interesting. He got hit a couple times at Penn State where he didn't come back in the game. And in the NFL, you got big dudes hitting these guys. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to be an excellent pick. He's just a crisp route runner that's just going to take over the game. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for him. But I just think the Broncos offensively are going to be good, but I don't think Drew Lock is ready to take that next step up to blow away everybody. Denver is another team, too, that their defense is pretty good. I think them and the Chargers are going to be very close. I think both are going to be in that 10-6, 9-7 range, but I give the Chargers that one-game edge over the Broncos, and that's simply quarterback play. I'd rather have Tyrod Taylor over Drew Lock, and I think with Tyrod playing at least some of the season, they're going to win some games I think Denver will lose because of Drew Lock. And then finally, it's going to be the Raiders. It's kind of crazy that, like, I look at the Raiders and I think to myself, like, all these teams so far that I've listed, none of them lose coaches so far, unless the Jets absolutely suck. But the Raiders are the one that you're like, well, if they suck again, you can't fire John Gruden because you gave him $100 million to coach your football team. The Raiders don't have a quarterback. That's just the reality. Mike Mayock has done an excellent job drafting that team. I had said before the Raiders hired Mike Mayock, and then when they hired him, that was a really good decision. Mike Mayock has been really a top scout in a weird way because he's been breaking down everybody in college for years. He loves breaking down college football players' film, which is great because you can find new young talent. Perfect example is Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan, who's a third-round pick that just lit the world on fire. He had 12.5 sacks last year. That's amazing. That's a great find for just some crazy-ass white kid from the MAC. Their problem is going to be they just don't have a quarterback. Derek Carr is just, he's Derek Carr. He's a game manager at best that when they need him to win a game, it's just not going to work. I feel like he's kind of intimidated by Gruden in a weird way. Like Gruden starts yelling and Derek Carr just looks really like nervous around him. It's weird. I don't think Derek Carr is the answer for them. And I don't think Mariota is gonna Tannehill him. You know how Tannehill came in and took out Mariota last year for the starting job? I don't think Mariota does that with Gruden. However, I do think Mariota is the starter for the second half of the season under Oakland, or Las Vegas now, under Vegas to figure out if he's the answer or if they keep him around for another year. But I think the Raiders are going to be another one of those teams that will absolutely be in a hunt for a quarterback next year in the draft. Not free agency. I think they're going full draft to go get themselves a quarterback. So the AFC West, Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. The AFC South, I have a shocking one here. So the AFC South, a lot of people will pick the Titans. A lot of people will pick the Texans. I'm going to pick the Colts. And it's an interesting pick because if you go back and listen to me talk about the Chargers and say Philip Rivers cost them games, you would say, well, how come the Colts are going to win? It's simple. The Chargers don't have a great offensive line, but I think Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert are athletic enough to survive, where Philip Rivers is not athletic enough to survive with a bad O-line, which I think caused him to force the ball a lot of the time. The Colts have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in football, and it's quietly one of the best offensive lines in football. I think Frank Reich's going to work well with him, and I think the Colts offense is going to have that extra kick because they're another team that if you go back and watch last year, there was a lot of one-possession games they lost in the end. Jacoby Brissett started pretty good, but then kind of tapered off at the end of the year. I know he had a knee injury, but he kind of proved that he wasn't it. He was a very good backup, serviceable starter, but he's not your guy. But I think the Colts take it. I think they're going to stay healthy, which is huge. Marlon Mack and T.Y. Hilton, as long as they can stay healthy, I think that gives Rivers enough weapons that they can, move on. I think the Colts also drafted Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC, so that'll be interesting as well. So I do. I think the Colts take it. I think they look good, and I don't think they're going to win like 12 games. I think it's going to be another 11-win, 10-win team that takes the AFC South. Number 2 is going to be the Titans. And here's the reality with the Titans. They went to the AFC Championship game last year, so everybody thinks they're going to be great. They were still 9-7 last year. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. They were still 9-7. Tannehill has played well in that offense because Tannehill all of a sudden can literally just be captain check down in that offense. He can dump the ball off once or twice, and he's good. His numbers were wonderful, but if you look at the amount of passes in the air, they go like 4 yards. Derrick Henry carries the load. He got paid this offseason. Good for him. He deserved it. Their defense is really good. But they're another one that, down the field, they have okay receivers, but nothing great. They didn't even pick up the 5th-year option on Corey Davis yet. A.J. Brown had an excellent rookie year, but, I just don't know if that offense has enough firepower to carry them. I think they're going to be good again. I think or average again. I think they're going to end about 8-8, 9-7, but the shine comes off at Tannehill a little bit. They don't win all the close games that they won last year. The Titans are a team. You take a lead on them, you win. I mean, the Chiefs showed it. While the Titans jumped out early, their game is control the clock. I mean, it's just sit on the ball, control the clock, score field goals, and, maybe a touchdown. 27 points, you're getting a W. 24, 27 points, you're getting a W if you're the Titans. It used to be a really good offense. You score 24, 27 points a game. Now it's one of the worst in the league. And I don't think the Titans are going to have enough firepower on offense to carry them through and carry them to the playoffs. I think they just missed the playoffs, probably around that 9-7, 8-8 range. Third is going to be a little bit shocking. The Houston Texans. And Houston's going to be a very interesting team this year. And this is one of the reasons why. I think Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. He's definitely top 10. But, there are some times where I watched Deshaun Watson throw, and I'm like, he looks like Donovan McNabb. He's exciting, but then he'll just throw one into a guy's feet. And there was quite a few times last year where he just kind of threw it up to DeAndre Hopkins, and it was, hey, it worked out for you. It was just one of those things. They have Will Fuller still on their team, but Will Fuller can never stay injured. They have Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks has been on like 18 different teams in the last 3 years for a reason. Brandon Cooks, he seemingly cannot stay on a team. I mean, to go from New Orleans to New England to the Rams and now to the Texans, I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, yeah, maybe David Johnson turns back the clock, but 100% not going to do that, and Bill O'Brien's going to look like an asshole as a general manager. And I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach. I don't think he gets enough credit for as good of a coach he is because he's such an idiot as a general manager. But I don't think they have enough to carry them now. I think their O-line still sucks. I mean, their O-line is terrible, and it's been terrible. And I don't know now, with the terrible O-line, Watson can keep you alive sometimes, but he can't do it all the time. And if you don't have DeAndre Hopkins out there to catch a ball, it's not looking good. And I think they do. I think they take a big step back. I think they end about 7-9. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Bill O'Brien get fired, which is a shame because, again, I think he's a good coach, but his dumbass moves as general manager is going to be what costs him a job as a head coach. And then lastly, I have the 2 wildcard teams. I'm going to go Pittsburgh and I'm going to go the Chargers. I think both of them are going to end. I think Pittsburgh ends about 11-5. And I think the Chargers end, if I had to gun to my head, 10-6. And I think that's how that's going to go. I think Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger back, is definitely at least 2 games better than they were last year. Excuse me. I think they're definitely 2 games better than they were last year. But you look at the Chargers as well. I think some of those close games at the end of the season, they'll end up taking those close games. They'll win those close games.